All right, 9. Scaevola then observed with courtesy, as was always his manner, I agree with Crassius as to other points, that I may not detract from the art or glory of Lilius my father in law, or of my son in law here. But I am afraid, Crassius, that I cannot grant you those 2 points. One, that states were, as you said, originally established and have often been preserved by orators. The other, that, setting aside the forum, the assemblies of the people, the courts of judicature, and the Senate House, the orator is, as you pronounced, accomplished in every subject of conversation and learning. For who will concede to you either that mankind dispersed originally in the mountains and woods, enclosed themselves in towns and walls, not so much from being convinced by the counsels of the wise as from being charmed by the speeches of the eloquent, or that other advantages arising either from the establishment or preservation of states were settled not by wise and brave men, but by fluent and elegant speakers? Does Romulus seem to you to have assembled the shepherds and those that flock to him from all parts, or to have formed marriages with the Sabines, or to have repelled the power of the neighboring people by eloquence and not by counsel and eminent wisdom? Is there any trace of eloquence apparent in Numa Pompilius, in Servius Tullus, or in the rest of our kings, from whom we have many excellent regulations for maintaining our government? After the kings were expelled, though we see that their expulsion was effected by the mind of Lucius Brutus and not by his tongue, do we not perceive that all the subsequent transactions are full of wise counsel, but destitute of all mixture of eloquence? But if I should be inclined to adduce examples from our own and other states, could cite more instances of mischief than of benefit done to public affairs by men of eminent eloquence. But to omit others, I think, Crassius, that the most eloquent men I have ever heard, except you two, were the Semperoni, Tiberius, and Caius, whose father, a prudent and grave man, but by no means eloquent, on several others service to the republic, and he, not by the faultless flow of speech, but by a word and a nod, transferred the freedom into the city tribes. And if he had not done so, we should now have no republic, which we still maintain with difficulty. But his sons, who were eloquent and qualified for speaking by all the helps of nature and of learning, having found the state in a most flourishing condition, both through the counsels of their father and the arms of their ancestors, brought their country by means of their oratory, that most excellent ruler of states, as you call it, to the verge of ruin. 10. Were our ancient laws and the customs of our ancestors, were the auspices over which you, Crassius, and I preside with great security to the republic, were the religious rites and ceremonies, were the civil laws, the knowledge of which has long prevailed in our family, and without any praise for eloquence, either invented or understood, or in any way ordered by the tribe of orators. I can remember that Servius Galba, a man of godlike power in speaking, as well as Marcus Aemilius Porcina and Gnaeus Carbo himself, whom you defeated when you were but a youth, was ignorant of the laws, at a loss in the practices of our ancestors, and unlearned in civil jurisprudence. And except you, Crassius, who rather from your own inclination to study than because it was any peculiar business of an orator, have learned the civil law from us. As I am sometimes ashamed to say, this generation of ours is ignorant of law. But what you assumed, as by a law of your own, in the last part of your speech, that an orator is able to speak fluently on any subject, I would not, if I were not here in your own domain, tolerate for a moment, but would head a party who should either oppose you by an interdict or summon you to contend with them at law for having so unceremoniously invaded the possessions of others. In the first place, all the Pythagoreans and the followers of Democritus would institute a suit against you with the rest of the natural philosophers, each in his own department, men who are eloquent and powerful speakers with whom you could not contend on equal terms. Whole troops of other philosophers would assail you besides, even down to Socrates, their origin and head, and would convince you that you had learned nothing about good and evil in life, nothing about the passions of the mind, nothing about the moral conduct of mankind, nothing about the proper course of life. They would show you that you have made no due inquiry after knowledge, and that you know nothing. And when they had made an attack upon you altogether, then every sect would bring its separate action against you. The academy would press you, and whatever you asserted, force you to deny it. Our friends and Stoics would hold you entangled in the snares of their disputations and questions. The Peripatetics would prove that those very aids and ornaments of speaking, which you consider the peculiar property of the orators, must be sought for themselves, and they would show you that Aristotle and Fratius would have written not only better, but also far more copiously on these subjects than all the masters of the art of speaking. I say nothing of mathematicians, the grammarians, the musicians, with whose sciences this art of speaking of yours is not connected by the least affinity. I think, therefore, Crassius, that such great and numerous professions ought not to be made. What you can effect is sufficiently great, namely, that in judicial matters the cause which you plead shall seem the better and more probable, that in public assemblies and in delivering opinions your oratory shall have the most power to persuade, that finally you shall seem in the wise to speak with eloquence, and even to the simple to speak with truth. If you can do more than this, it will appear to me that it is not the orator, but Crassius himself, that effects it by the forces of talents peculiar to himself and not common to other orators.